Scotland. Our beautiful home is known for many things around the world. Its vast, picturesque landscapes which span the length and breadth of the country. Its fierce passion for the beautiful game, despite not always enjoying success. And for its trademark, changeable weather. However, it's the weather which is beginning to put the football at risk.
I think climate change has a massive impact on it because, frozen pitches, there's not a lot of funding in grassroots football as well, so, with the slightest bit of rain, pitches are flooded, numerous games get called off.
We're absolutely desperately needing to be more urgent in our actions around climate change. We're not succeeding in many areas.
For me, we've made a lot of progress, but there's a lot more we need to do because climate change is not an issue for the future, it's a now issue.
Scottish football is traditional, but it is not unique. There are ways you can do things that are smarter, that will save you money and also save the environment.
Ensuring the environmental sustainability of Scottish football requires collaboration across every level, from grassroots to government. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll be taking a look at how climate change is impacting the sport and what more the game can do to help combat it. My name's Callum Watt, and this is Pitch In.
Climate change poses an existential threat to life as we know it. The consensus amongst climate scientists is that we must reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050 in order to limit global temperature rises to 1.5 degrees by 2100 and secure a greener and brighter future. However, only a few months ago, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak watered down the UK's climate pledges, with many arguing that this makes net zero significantly harder to achieve. And turning to football, an industry known for being hugely wasteful thanks to its enormous power consumption, extensive matchday waste and jet setting across the world. UEFA have announced a revamp to the men's game, which will see an additional 177 games played, and according to BBC research, an additional 500 million air miles flown at a time we really can't afford it.
Lots of people have declared a climate emergency in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, and that's really true. So we're absolutely desperately needing to be more urgent in our actions around climate change. We're not succeeding in many areas, and we need to have a lot more resources and time and effort put into tackling this massive, massive global problem. I think the biggest challenge is how do we progress on certain areas? So reaching net zero is a really, really big challenge for everyone, from public sector, private sector, and people are doing various things, but it's kind of a little bit unsure how we're doing in terms of targets. In terms of adaptation, we know we're not reaching any of the goals that we need to be reaching at the moment. So this is where we need to understand that the impacts of climate change are going to affect us through various different hazards. And we've had a lot of reports telling us that Scotland is behind. But I'm not saying that's in comparison with other countries, because lots of countries are behind. So it's not that we're doing badly or better, it's just for what we need to achieve and what we've laid down for us as a country, we're not doing so well, and we need to kind of up our game.
A report by the Rapid Transition Alliance estimates that a quarter of UK football grounds will be flooded by 2050. So if Scotland doesn't up its game, what follows could be devastating, especially for clubs such as Arbroath and Aberdeen, whose grounds are within very close proximity to the North Sea. More short term though, it's postponements which are becoming more prevalent.
So we're already seeing major sporting events being cancelled at the last minute, losing a lot of revenue for maybe extreme weather events. And then how we're going to adjust to increased temperatures, increased rainfall here in Scotland as well, that's going to have a really big impact on the games that we want to come and see and are part of our culture.
So we hear of professional matches in Scotland being postponed increasingly regularly due to inclement weather. In fact, only a few months ago, in December 2023, 11 matches in Scotland fell foul to the weather. And I actually travelled from Edinburgh all the way to Dingwall just for a game to be postponed on the day. But what about grassroots and youth level clubs whose often basic facilities just cannot cope with the increasingly extreme weather? I'm currently on my way to Ainsley Park, home of Spartans, to speak to Spartans Girls Academy coach David, whose team are not unique in
been suffering a number of climate-related postponements.
So obviously we had a game kind of pre-season, kind of like December time where the pitch was frozen. It obviously has an impact on like the girls' week, and because they're not getting game time, they can't kind of develop in that aspect. And obviously having coached grassroots before, I think climate change has a massive impact on it because frozen pitches, there's not a lot of funding in grassroots football as well. So with the slightest bit of rain, pitches are flooded. Numerous games get called off, especially between November and say February.
With the rescheduled games, they need to be played, and they'll most likely be played sort of near the end of the season. Does the fixture congestion come into it as well?
It does. Obviously with grassroots coaching, we've got 20 games in the season, and it's like August to May standard as you would Premiership games. And I've had experiences, maybe not as much this season, but in previous seasons where it gets to the point where there's been that many games called off, and there's teams that are like 5, 6, maybe sometimes even 7 games in hand, and then obviously by the time that they come along, you've only got about a good couple of weeks to play them. So then you have to end up playing midweek games, which takes away a training session, which, although they're playing multiple games a week, trainings where obviously the players, whether girls or boys, will develop more.
As well as looking at how climate change impacts football, we need to look at how football impacts climate change. From floodlights and scoreboards to the kitchens and TV cameras, every aspect of a ground draws a huge amount of power for hours at a time. It's estimated that they use between 15 and 30,000 kilowatt hours of energy on a single match day, which is enough to power a dozen households for an entire year. Then there's the matchday waste. You only need to look around the seats after a game to see the huge quantities of single-use food containers left to be thrown into landfill, or the litres of water used in maintaining the playing surface. And climate experts believe more needs to be done if sustainability targets are to be achieved.
Anything that's an industry is producing emissions of some kind, generally speaking. And so, the sports industry really needs to look carefully at how it's going to meet any sustainability targets that it might have. And so that can come down to the direct emissions that it's producing through its stadiums and events. But it's also maybe looking at visitors, so spectator emissions as well. And that's where it gets really difficult, because you're trying to control something that may be slightly out of your control.
What's not out of the governing body's control is how many games it schedules. Supporter travel already accounts for up to 80% of football's carbon emissions, so this documentary asked UEFA for comment about its decision to add 177 extra men's matches and received the following statement.
UEFA's events enclose multiple dimensions including sporting, environmental, economic and social aspects. The decision to increase the number of participants in the Champions League, Europa League or Conference League followed an extensive consultation process considering each aspect. The new format will help us improve the competitive balance and generate solid revenues for clubs, leagues and grassroots football across our continent. Since UEFA Euro 2016, which earned the International Standardization Organization Sustainability ISO 20121 certification for its operations, each of the UEFA finals has been accompanied by a carbon reduction plan. This plan is supported by a collaborative approach to effectively implement the reduction goals, which was not the case in the past. The continuous improvements of the standards we deliver serves as evidence of our dedication to both environmental and social responsibility commitments.
Closer to home, Hibernian in Edinburgh can boast of owning the Greenest Club in Scotland tag. The club has implemented a variety of climate-friendly initiatives which aim to reduce its carbon footprint, ensure its sustainability for years to come, and kickstart similar action amongst its fans.
What we did is we put in solar panels on the east stand at Easter Road. So I believe it's over 300 panels that were put in there. So that provides self-generation that is consumed on site. And we also have the self-generating panels at HTC. We also looked at what we can do to reduce the energy that we consume. So we had several pool cars for different scouts that take the cars, or different people that are going to go to games. And so what we had was, let's say, 5 gas guzzlers. We reduced that down to the only sort of gas car that we have is our kit van, just because of the distance that it goes with all the kit that's in it. So we changed over the car system. We put in charging points. So at HTC, there are, I think, 6 charging points that we have that all of our employees can use. And we have 2 at Easter Road that are free for employees. Then we have a charging station that we put in for all the residents um, around Easter Road. Other things that we did: environmental waste control. So environmental waste control is a company that takes care of our waste. And what essentially they do is they take away, we put everything into their dumpster, they take away the dumpster, and they're able to sort out what can be basically recycled or what can be burned off. Then I think from what they burn off, they generate some energy from that. And then the other stuff they can recycle. So it's rather than it going to landfill. That's the important part of it.
Despite all these initiatives though, even the Greenest Club in Scotland concede they are far from perfect yet.
The other side of this, and this, if really, this story should also be told, is during that time we also bought grow lights, and those grow lights that we have an incredible amount of energy that is consumed, more so than any of the reductions we've done, and more so than any of the self-generation. So whilst we may have made good strides, we also did increase our carbon footprint during the time just from those grow lights. There is an efficient way. There's a slightly efficient way you can do it by switching to LED bulbs, but apparently, even with the LED bulbs, don't generate enough as the old bulbs. But look, I'm hopeful. Even though I said I think we generate more, I'm hopeful that we actually are net neutral because of all the other stuff that we do to decrease our electricity load.
Obviously, football clubs are in quite a unique position in being really influential within their communities and their fan bases and stuff. So how important was that for Hibs to use their status to promote positive change?
Ultimately, it's one of the most important things we can do is to try to educate people into making those smarter decisions. We do have 15 to 20,000 people that are coming to visit you. So promoting the green activities and green initiatives we have is quite important to us. The club's been around since 1875. We're about to celebrate the 150th anniversary. What we want to make sure is we celebrate the 200 and 250th anniversary without that being, Easter Road being a beachside stadium.
So we've heard what the club are doing, but I've come down to Easter Road, Hibernian's home ground, on a Saturday match day to see if the initiatives are having the desired influence amongst the fans.
I've tried to use my car less generally and, get into the stage in life that I'm at now in my mid-50s. I'm trying to walk a lot more. But walking the football would be tricky because I come with my dad, who is in his 80s, so we do have to drive to get him here.
We came in on the tram last week, for example, the last game. So yes, it does make me think of that. But again, it's across the community. I'm a teacher, so I'm actually teaching sustainability.
About a 40-minute tram journey away, but if I could reduce it, I would, but I don't really fancy walking the 2 hours to Easter Road.
If my club was doing things in order to improve their efficiency, then I'd be more likely to get the bus or even cycle here, give the wee man a baccy.
However, while it's encouraging to see that sustainable practices are beginning to rub off on the fans, it's important that clubs continue to innovate and lead from the front in the fight against climate change.
Absolutely, there's a lot more that can be done. I mean, there's endless of things that can be done on green. I mean, we still have so much wastage at the stadium on a match day by overcooking food. We used Too Good to Go a couple of times. It was good, but it wasn't cost effective in the end. But there are ways that a full audit on a match day would be quite interesting to see how much energy we could save if you just looked at where it was spent on a match day. So, and I think there's loads that the government can be doing. And if they really want to have an impact on these clubs that people are going to, and we would, if we got that money from the government, we would be happy to tell everybody we got that money from the government, and that to me would go a long way with the fans who come to Easter Road every week. I think that would be like, oh, great. Well, they paid for it. The government helped pay for it. So it doesn't. Whilst I love the fact that my club is saving energy, they didn't have to pay for it or they got it for a very discounted rate because the government helped them out. I think the government should be doing a lot more.
Despite what some people may argue, football and politics go hand in hand, and that is especially true when we're discussing how the entire industry can become more sustainable. So I've come down here to the Scottish Parliament to see what more politicians can do to help change the game for good.
Well, I think there's something about making people aware about it. There's a marketing opportunity for clubs. You can talk about what new things they're going to do that are going to reduce their impact on the climate. It's good in terms of their reputation. So maybe the government talking about football clubs, going to have a look and see what's actually changing. There's not just using cleaner, greener electricity to power your infrastructure. There's the message that sends. It's also communicating with your fans as to what you're trying to do to tackle that climate emergency. And I think it's good for their reputation because they're actually taking the climate emergency seriously. So yeah, good for marketing, but also thinking about how you communicate with your fans, because there are thousands upon thousands of young people will want their clubs to do that, but it's also a good way to communicate with people of all ages, to be honest. And some of the fans will be business people, some will work in the third sector. There might even be 1 or 2 MSPs that are turning up to matches. So what you're doing is you're actually reaching out to a bit of the population that we don't always see properly involved in that climate discussion. So I think it can only be good.
Despite the occasional finger pointing claiming that certain stakeholders aren't pulling their weight, real and lasting change will only be achieved through cooperation and compromise.
There's something about everybody clubbing together and actually raising awareness here. And the fact you've got a bit of competition between the clubs now to be the greenest, not just in terms of the shirt colour, that's a step forward, isn't it? And getting all of them to start playing their part and getting the SFA maybe to talk to Scottish Government or even local authorities about what more they can do together, because nobody tackles climate change on their own. We've got to do it together, and we've got to do it not just once, but going forward all the time.
I did contact the SFA a number of times to see if they would be interested in taking part in an interview for this documentary. However, they didn't get back to my request for comment. There is, though, an Environmental Sustainability in Scottish Football PDF, which is available online, and it covers all the benefits of becoming more sustainable for clubs. But it would have been good to hear what concrete action and support the governing body can offer its members. However, as we've heard throughout the course of the documentary, it's the small actions which can lead to positive and permanent change. So the onus is now on us, the Scottish football fans, to play our part in future-proofing the game and pitch in.